So if we can, I think we're going to get started. We've got a lot to cover. It's an overview. So we're going to try to touch everything. So I'm Brian Keller. I'm a lead program manager on the Config Manager team, and I'm here with Russ.
I'm Russ Wilson. I'm also a program manager. And, you know, Brian, I'm just worried we've got so much stuff in 2012. I don't know how we're going to cover it in an hour and a quarter.
It's going to be
unbelievable.
It's going to be tough.
So
there's some challenges, though, with being the 3 o'clock session on a Monday. First of all, welcome to MMS. Russ and I were a little worried because we saw the line for the attendee check-in, and we thought we were going to have to move all our equipment out into the hallway and present to you out there. Did everybody get in and get checked in okay? All right, are you excited about MMS?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Maybe standing in the line kind of curbs some of that enthusiasm, but we'll try to get it back for you. So the other challenge for a 3 o'clock session on Monday is that most of this stuff is going to be covered in depth by a bunch of peers of ours over the week. Lots of demos, lots of rich information, and so we're going to try to scratch the surface. And so a couple of demos we're going to do, you know, we don't want to steal anyone's thunder, so we're going to do some obscure stuff, things you're not going to see the rest of the week. I'm going to do this super secret admin console debugging view thing, and I'll deploy a DP. Lots of exciting things that you've been waiting to see. And then, Russ, you've got some stuff coming too, right?
Yeah, so we're going to show the operations management pack. We're going to show all the cool new remote control. So what we're going to do is take a pass over all the features to give you a kind of view of how you go about staging 2012 from really soup to nuts. And then we're going to take so you get an overview of everything, and then particular areas, as Brian says, we're going to geek out and just drill down. So hopefully there'll be something to keep you excited.
So the way we organize the presentation here is we're going to kind of walk through the beginnings of what you're going to be thinking around CM12. So instead of going high-level marketing spiel, drill into some areas, we're just going to start straight up with what are you going to think about with CM12 regarding hierarchy, the hierarchy simplification, the infrastructure improvements we've made in Config Manager 2012. I'm going to discuss how role-based administration ties into that, how some of the improvements we've made to distribution points ties into that, and obviously since you're going to be building CM12 from scratch, you're not going to be upgrading from ConfigMan 2007. We have some migration feature that's there to assist, and so I'll discuss that briefly.
And then once we've got the infrastructure set up, what do we want to do? We want to go and deploy our clients, and then get our collections set up, and really everything from monitoring infrastructure through to getting the clients to be secure. Now we're going to spend, there's a number of sessions, well there's a great session on endpoint protection, software updates. We're not going to drill too much into that. So some of these areas we're going to drill down specifically to show the innovation we've done over the last few years.
Yeah, and then once you have your software updates in place, you have your endpoint protection running, you feel confident with your infrastructure and the security compliance that you've set up, now you're going to start thinking about deploying software. So I'll discuss the kind of people-centric management approach we've taken in Config Manager 2012. I'll talk about the new app model. I think some of you who attended the presentation just previously in this room on app management. Okay, so that was a really good in-depth presentation on the application model and kind of the new way of thinking around software distribution. I'll talk about some of the things we've done with VDI, a first step into the VDI world within ConfigMan 2012, and how that ties into software distribution and inventory and things like that. And obviously then operating system deployment, OSD, the ongoing moving from different version of Windows, you got to consider that as you move forward with the management product.
And then we're going to finish off with kind of refinement, putting the cherry on top. Configuration and compliance. Some enhancements there, not just being able to monitor, but actually apply settings. Look at power policy, quick look at reporting, and remote control to finish off those features that don't sometimes get some mention, but we'll give them a shot today.
Awesome. So I don't know if other people are going to have this slide. This is a very high level. These were the things we were going after. Our pillars, our tenets as a product group when we were thinking about developing the next version of product for you, the customer, thinking about how we can empower users, not just those end users, but also administrator users through some improvements to the product, unifying and simplifying your infrastructure, making sure that it's easy to deploy Config Manager, that you don't have to spend more money than you have to on infrastructure and management of the product. And then improvements we've made to the admin experience within the admin console, being able to find things quickly, have workflows that are built in to the product, to the admin console for you to get your job done quickly. talk about what I'm going to, so infrastructure promises. Essentially, we wanted to modernize the infrastructure, take a fresh look at Configuration Manager and how we might have it deployed and running in your environment. So consolidating specifically the number of primary sites you'll need in your environment, looking at how we can reduce infrastructure at remote offices. So I'll talk a little bit about what that's all about, and then obviously improving the scalability and some of the data latency problems we've seen in earlier versions of the product. Specifically on primary sites, here's some ways that you might think you need to consider for adding primary sites in your environment. So for scale, if you had more than 100,000 clients, maybe for some redundancy, reducing the impact of a primary site failure. You might need a local point of administration, so you might have to put up a primary site for that reason. There may be some political reasons, or even government or regulational reasons, why you would need a primary site in a specific location. So all those things are still true in the product in ConfigMan 2012. Some of the things that you had to consider in the past, though, when deploying primary sites in CM07 was being able to decentralize your administration, protect certain assets from certain administrators or roles, or segmenting out your environment that way based on that data, that access, and so forth. Also, if you have specific groups of resources that you need to segment out, for example, you need to have specific settings for servers. You might set up a primary site that just servers talk to, so you can control the settings and the access to those. Language is another reason. Maybe you have your French primary and your English primary in different locations for language reasons, and then for content routing. These are reasons no more to have a primary site because of some of the improvements we've made. For example, one of the big improvements that allows for this is our role-based administration. So we now have roles. You can assign users to these roles. You assign scopes. So you can say these collections, these resources, these actions for this role and this scope assigned to these users. That way you can have someone log into the admin console and only see what they should be accessing, and only see the actions that they should be going after, and only see those collections and resources and applications and packages that are appropriate for them. So you don't need two primary sites now. You can have two users with different access roles and have one primary site. So the other one that's pretty exciting for me, because I got to see this in the real world a lot with some of the customers that I worked with, particularly my own TAP customer during the beta process, is being able to reduce infrastructure at branch offices. A lot of this is because of the work we've done with content and with distribution points. So we have one distribution point now, no more branch DPs. You just deploy a distribution point to a client, could be a server. We have the multicast option, but what's really cool and what's really helpful, I think, and was for my customer, was the throttling and scheduling of content. So this customer had 77 secondary sites at very obscure branch locations. They were having to call folks on the phone to try to get some information about those sites when there were some problems with SQL, because you need that for the secondary site. It was really hard to manage for them. And so they just replaced all 77 secondaries with distribution points, remote distribution points. And because they were using the secondary sites essentially for bandwidth controls over slow links. So that was a huge win. In addition, we have this concept of pre-staging content. So if you don't want content to flow over a network, you can take the content physically to a location and stage it to the distribution point, and clients will have access to the content there. We also have distribution point groups. So if you create a group and you assign content to a group, and then you can assign distribution points to that group or remove distribution points from that group, and the content goes to those distribution points or is removed from those distribution points. So it's almost like a state-based content system for managing groups of distribution points. Now, interestingly enough, as I mentioned at the beginning, we have a couple of sessions that are going to go in depth in the area of infrastructure, and I want to let you know about that. So we have one on Tuesday at 11:45 and Wednesday at 2:15. We're really, I believe DC is going to go in depth with you on infrastructure and into role-based administration, into the primary sites. He's got a lot of more in-depth examples, so definitely check those out if you can. Now, when I talk about infrastructure improvements, as I mentioned, there's no upgrade from ConfigMan 2007 to ConfigMan 2012. So many different changes in ConfigMan 2012. Upgrade just wasn't feasible. In addition, because of these hierarchy changes, we want you to start rethinking how you've designed your hierarchy. We don't want you to just upgrade in place your existing infrastructure. So we want to make sure that you rethink, how many primary sites do I really need? Can I just have one now? Or how many secondary sites do I really need? Could I replace those with distribution points? So getting to rethink that hierarchy is important. But that being said, you have a lot of existing investments in 2007, right? So you've got your collections that you've built, and maybe they're very custom queries of yours. You've got packages and programs you've spent a lot of time on. So we wanted to be able to have you move those, get those into your new ConfigMan 2012 site quickly. So we have a built-in feature for migrating objects, migrating clients. We take care not to impact the WAN when we do this migration. And basically, we're trying to flatten your hierarchy and get you into a more simple frame of mind there. As I mentioned, it's built in, so you do it right from the console. Object migration, for example, collections, packages, programs, boundaries, meeting rules, these are all objects that can be moved. Content functionality, so you can reuse 2007 content for sharing during the interop period. We'll upgrade your distribution points, and then we'll also take your MOF files in and get those into CM12. And once again, full session on this, in depth. If you're really interested in migration and deployment and you want to learn more, definitely go on Wednesday at 10:15. I believe Eric's going to be presenting there, and he's excellent. He knows his stuff, so check him out. In addition, I want to talk about the admin experience. So we've changed the way the admin experience is, the admin console UI. We're no longer MMC. Hey, where's that? Right there. Awesome.
Come on, who enjoyed MMC? Come on, who's going to moan the death? No, okay, right.
The interesting thing is you can hackle us, and I can't see anything. These lights are so good thing I didn't drink very much last night because I'd be in real trouble right now. So the look and feel of the admin console is much like you would see in other System Center products now, as well as if you kind of look, it's kind of Outlook-like with the wonder bars and categorized and organized that way. So really improved discoverability of different workflows within the product. Also, I talked about role-based administration, so you're only going to see those things that are pertinent to your role. We want you to be able to complete the scenarios within the console. So we've got in-console monitoring. We've got new wizards to walk you through end-to-end. So there's nothing else you have to do and leave the console to get it done. The searching, the filtering, just simplified navigation, all things we've invested in the next version. So let me go ahead and do a quick demo. I'm a little parched. I'm from Seattle. This desert is not used to it. But I will tell you, I came here on Saturday, and it was 50 and raining. And I'm like, come on. I'm from Seattle. I'm coming to Las Vegas. But fortunately, I saw the weather report. It's supposed to get gorgeous. So we're in for a real treat this week. 90 degrees, hot. It's going to be awesome.
And you're going to be inside all week, Brian. You know that.
And I'm going to be inside all week.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, thanks,
good.
Russ. I appreciate that, man. God, I'm so depressed. Uh-oh, let's get back in there. Come on. See, look at that. Jinxed myself, saying I was from Seattle. I think this is, yeah.
Yeah, don't worry about security, Brian. It's fine.
That's fine. No, I don't.
It's only a cert.
I don't care about that. All right, so new admin console. Let's see if we go into full screen. I think that'll be better. All right. So I talked about these categories or these wonder bars. I'm just going to do a quick walkthrough so you're familiar with it. You're going to see this console a lot this week. So just to give you a quick overview, here's where you're going to see all your collections, both user and device collections. You're going to run your AI features out of here, do your metering, actually settings management, DCM from here, all your endpoint protection from the assets and compliance area. Software library, we got the new application management folder where you're going to create applications, manage applications, still do package programs when you need to. Global conditions for creating requirement rules within apps, all from here. Your software updates are done from here, and also OSD. Monitoring, this is a huge improvement, I think, personally. Just being able to do all the in-console monitoring, look at the state of content distribution to DPs, to look at deployments and statistics around deploying software. So the in-console monitoring is huge. You can check out your alerts and access reports. Under administration, it's kind of those traditional set up my hierarchy, create my roles, create my site systems, do client agent settings, look at distribution points, and also manage the feature I talked about a moment ago, migration. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to stay here, and I'm going to deploy, create a site system role. Now, I talked about how distribution points can be deployed now simply to servers or clients. So Melissa PC, Melissa is our end user persona. So this happened to me, kind of pause for a minute, but it'll recognize it and fill it in. There we go. So essentially we've got that. We're going to say the site, use the computer's account. Oh, look at that. I got lucky right there. My next button. Awesome. Distribution point, that's the only role I'm going to use. I'm going to go ahead and install and configure IAS. Once again, look, I'm not choosing branch DP or anything else. I'm just saying I want a distribution point. I'm targeting this system via FQDN. I'm going to have HTTP. I won't enable this for pre-staging. That's going to be OK. Click Next. Here's where I'll set the drive information for where the content library goes. I'll choose the defaults. Don't need OSD. Don't need multicast. I'm going to talk about this validation in a moment because I'm going to need some filler while this works. So I'm also going to associate this site system with a boundary group and associate that DP with the distribution point with a boundary group. So what that means is that clients that are in that boundary or sets of boundaries will have access to this distribution point as well as access to the local distribution point that I already installed on the site. So this is where I'm going to need some filler time because for some reason it takes a while to get it all figured out and tell me what it's about to do. So the validation is pretty neat. So we have content validation on distribution points. Essentially, you can schedule that or you can run it on demand, and we'll go look at the distribution point and see what is the content that's supposed to be there. Is it all there? Are there any missing files? Is stuff corrupted? So we'll go through and we'll validate that. And you can schedule that to happen any now and again. Who's clapping? Love that? All right.
Oh, he's impressed.
Excited about content validation. Anyone else excited about content validation? Do I hear a second one right there?
There you go. There you go.
All right. It's like clapping. All right. Here's why I might need some more filler, but I didn't. Oh, thank you. Okay, because I didn't have anything else to say.
You told some jokes there, Brian.
That's not good.
That would be sad.
So I went ahead and did that. So let's go in and add this distribution point to a group. So I've got this distribution point group called Contoso North America. If I look at the membership, which I can do that in the property sheet, I've got the local distribution point to this site, primary site. So I'm going to go ahead and add another one. Oh, it's not ready yet. Come on, come on. Let me double check something here. See if this client is. What do I got here? Get rid of that guy. I don't need that. One more check before I go in. There it is. Okay. I was about to go do a bunch of troubleshooting steps, and I just got saved. Actually, you all got saved from my bumbling. All right, so there's that new distribution point I created. Apply that. Now, here's the interesting part. If I go in and I look at all the content associated with this distribution point group, I'm going to see Paint, and Microsoft Bugger, and a bunch of stuff, and all the size and everything. What happens is it's state-based. So by adding that distribution point to this group, all that content is now going to start flowing to that new distribution point. Let me also show you one other thing that I wanted to point out, and then I'll be done here. That wasn't what I wanted to do. Right here. So we have a couple tabs here. Once again, scheduling for when you want to shut off content flow or minimize content flow. We've got rate limits as well. So this is how we're able to kind of replace some of those traditional secondary sites by being able to set these limits. So for example, if I had a branch office that on Monday between 4 and let's say 8 o'clock uploaded a bunch of critical data over the WAN back to the headquarters, and I wanted to make sure that a bunch of content wasn't flowing down at the same time, I could go ahead and close those off. So as an example. The other thing, if I go to monitoring and I go to distribution point status, you're going to see now that I have some success, and I now have in progress for, say, .NET Framework. And the reason I have in progress is because, let's see, hopefully this renders pretty quickly, still retrieving. starting to process content on this new distribution point. So automatically, by adding it to the distribution point group, we're getting content sent to that distribution point, making it ready for clients when they have to access it. And that is all she wrote. All right.
Sweet.
Russ,
good. So
rock and roll.
Brian has got our infrastructure set up. He's got his content going. You wouldn't think he was own content, would you? All that geeking out. So now what we're going to do is look at some of the issues from going from discovering clients, finishing up client management points and distribution points, where they're going to go, look at client settings. So I'm not going to spend too long on actually pushing the client out. I'm not going to spend too long on SCEP or software update. It's the bit in the middle, which is interesting. So Active Directory discovery. So you know that we're user-centric. So one of the things that we had to do was be efficient in discovering users and user groups. So we had to do a little bit of work under the covers within Active Directory discovery to make it performant, to make it easy to use. A key thing is that we discover in one site. So we elect one primary site, that's the discovery, and all of the data gets replicated around. We also have the ability to do efficient discovery. So we do incremental discovery. So we don't go and hit your DCs and take them down. We don't take them down to start with, but we certainly lighten the load after you've done the initial discovery. And we've also got a big green button in the UI, which is really cool. I think that's the best feature. But, you know. So the first thing I do is I want to allocate a primary site for the discovery processing. And what's going to happen is it's going to go out and discover all of the network, all of the AD, and we'll talk about domains and forests and things like that. It's basically going to discover everything and bring in that information into the site, put it in the database. And it's still good old DDR, data discovery records that we have there. And then those get replicated around, including secondary sites. So this is one of the great benefits of 2012 is that at least from an entity identity, where the machines are, where your devices are, everybody knows, all the sites know where all the devices are. Now this is my geeky slide. I have to apologize about this one. But it kind of summarizes some of the changes we've done. So I'll nip through this one. So system discovery. So this is, in 2007, the basic discovery of computer information. For 2012, we've enhanced that. We discovered OU. We discovered AD container information, which is pretty cool. User discovery. This is where we had to do the most work, the most getting under the hood and changing things around. So it actually does discover basic information about users and OU and AD containers. It doesn't discover the user security group relationships anymore. That is the job of security group discovery, or what's called Active Directory group discovery in the UI. So this does a very efficient means of discovering security groups and discovering user security group relationships and the system security group relationships. And therefore, it replaces system group discovery from 2007. Deep breath, nearly finished. And finally, forest discovery. So this goes out and finds forests and gives you the ability to discover those AD boundaries and IP boundaries, which you can then use for various site assignment. You can use it for content boundaries, those sort of things. OK. How many of you, 2007, do internet-facing clients in native mode? A few hands, few hands. The brave, the few. I love it. It's great. So in 2007, if you wanted to go internet-facing, you had to go native mode. You had to put your MP and DP highly secure. You ended up dedicating a primary site to it. So it's quite tough, right, to do. So we really want to make this a lot easier. So what we have in 2012 is there is no native or non-native mode. Basically, you can decide what you want to do with your primary site. Do you want it to manage corporate network connected clients and internet connected clients? And therefore, do you want it to use HTTPS or HTTP? You can choose which way you want. And this gives you the ability to make a diagram looking like that. So you can have one primary site which is supporting both clients coming in from the internet and in from the corporate network. And this is really the theme of 2012, right? We don't want to have infrastructure. We don't have primary sites sitting around just because, for reasons other than scale or very major reasons. So this is another great simplicity attempt we're doing. So collections. Collections, because we now have the ability to define things like site settings on the basis of collections, they become more important to actually help people create them and manage them. So we have some improved UI validation for user-centric scenarios. We have a separation of user and device collections. So it used to be everything was just a resource. You create a collection, you create a WQL, it throws your resources in the collection. We've now said, no, you really need to define whether or not this collection is for users or devices. You still have the ability to create queries. There's a queries node, and you can throw you can return any arbitrary object there. It doesn't have to be a resource. And as I said, the resource security is based on collection, not on site. So this is very important. So we have collections which are scoped. Now, one of the things we did want to do is reduce the complexity. Now, I know probably many of you enjoy WMI, WQL, select star, and all that jazz. But we thought, given the importance of collections, we're going to make it easier for you to actually combine collections. So we have the ability to say, I'm going to include this collection, or I'm going to exclude this collection. And so you can actually, once you build up your base set of collections, you can then have derived collections which perhaps don't need WQL in it. They're just basically using the existing set of collections. And I'll show you that in a moment. And finally, we have the great UI, which Brian showed. Includes folders, includes kind of the notion of favorites. It kind of, your collections are kind of sticky when you've used them, and they'll show up in the UI. So we've made that easy to look at. Client settings. So quick, you'll hear a lot about granular client settings, collection-based client settings. So let me just briefly summarize them. So this is, it basically means you can define client settings which are now per collection and not per site. So no more needing a primary site just because those users do or do not want to be remote controlled, or those machines rather.
Yeah, when we talk about, can I get my mic, please?
No, so you've had yours. It's my turn now.
I know, but can I get,
All right.
Thank you. I just want to point out that this is one of the huge reasons, along with role-based administration, the client agent settings, being able to say, for this collection, here's the specific settings, is another major reason why we can simplify the infrastructure and make it a lot easier for you.
Absolutely. So settings are also prioritized. So if you have machines which are actually in multiple collections and subject to multiple client settings, then you can actually prioritize the execution order to say, okay, this is the way I want the settings to be applied. And their settings are additive and can be partially set. So what I mean is, if we have default client settings, which typically you'll switch on hardware inventory, switch on a number of your other agents, you can then have specific client settings which only have a very small number of the agent settings in them. So you don't need to replicate things, which is very, very handy. So here's an example, increasing specific collections. So I've got a collection for all machines. I switched on update, endpoint protection, get me secure. And for another, just for my desktops and laptops, I might want to do software inventory because I want to know what's on them. Another classic example is overriding specific collections. So I might want to switch on remote control for all my client machines, but disable them for those executive users for their machines specifically. OK, so we're going to move on to the monitoring portion now and look at client-side monitoring and server-side monitoring. So client status, AKA client health. We call it client status to be very specific about the role it's actually doing. So one of the issues we're trying to address is the effort to keep the infrastructure working. And particularly that's about clients. How do you keep clients checking in with the management point? Because it's very, very important now, not just patch, but now there's endpoint protection. So we want to make sure that it's easy for you to know that your clients are healthy, and that doesn't hopefully involve going around to the machine and opening up WMI and trying to figure out, look at the logs. So this is why this infrastructure is in place. And it's based on two basic concepts. So the first one is client activity, and this is on the server, we monitor whether or not the client's coming in. Are those discovery records coming in? Is inventory coming in? Are we getting status messages up? So the management point kind of knows, keeps track of what the client's talking to it on. And we also get some information from AD. So we get the AD timestamp. So when you're troubleshooting, it may well be that if the client hasn't been checking in, maybe it's been checking into AD. So you think, something's up here. Maybe the client that machine really is on the network, but there's something wrong with the client. And secondly, there's a client check. And this is quite a neat infrastructure. I think I'll just go on to the next slide to show it. So client check it's an independent agent. It's called something called CCM eval.exe, which is run on the client, and it's kind of a buddy to CCM exec. It's buddy to the actual CCM agent. And so it keeps it running. It also does independent checks. So it checks for prerequisites are still in place for the client. And in some cases, it will actually go and fix stuff. So for example, if WMI is busted, never happens, but let's just say it did, then it will actually go and, did I say that? I don't think I did.
No.
Okay. Scratch that from the record. And I actually talk about improvements specifically around WMI. So it will go and remediate. It'll actually reinstall the client and get WMI working. We've had one of the sessions, I'll talk about it now, but I'll refer to it in a moment, is MSIT, who are saying how they've used this feature. And really, the numbers they've got are really pretty impressive. If you really want to go to that session and hear about it, I won't steal their thunder now. So in addition to client check, we have that client activity. And this is all surrounded within the console by in-console alerts. And we'll show you how that works in a moment. So just a summary of that. CCM eval is invoked by, this is an example of WMI corruption. So it's a specific example of what might happen. So CCM eval is invoked by a scheduled task. It typically runs once a day. It's configurable. It reads its instructions, and it will perform a WMI repository check. In this case, it does a couple of things. One of the things it does is write into WMI and say, can I actually write an instance and then read that back? So we're not just relying on WMI to say, hey, things are OK. If that actually fails, then what it can do is a full remediation of WMI. It actually reinstalls the client. In some cases, it doesn't need to do that. And that's a reference to the session, day-to-day client and security management from both a product group and MSIT, which is going to be a great session. OK, moving now. How many of you used the operations management pack with 2007? OK, a few. So again, we had some feedback that this needed some improvement. So we rewrote it. We basically started from scratch. We went around all the feature teams and said, what's really important about your alerts? How do you know if component manager isn't working? How do you know if distribution manager's got problems? And we actually cut down a number of the alerts that we're actually generating. We actually decided to make sure that they're actually actionable. We also made it customizable. Again, a geeky feature. If you're into customizing it, then we made them public to allow for reuse. An important thing is stateful monitors. So rather than just sending an alert up, monitors allow the ability where they actually have state. So a component can be in error, and then it can fix itself. And so if you go away from the console, then you might come back and it's just fixed itself. So that's very important. We don't want to, again, overwhelm you with events which are not relevant. And it's available now. So we've got this, works on 2007 R2, I believe, and the new Operations Manager 2012 coming out. Alerts. So alerts are native within the Configuration Manager console. Brian talked about them. They're actually very, very important to the usability of the console. So key features such as endpoint protection, such as the infrastructure, client status, and I'll show you, actually will raise alert. And you can define what threshold typically that means. It's a very functionally relevant. So in the case of client status, if the client check is failing on more than 5% of my clients, I might want an alert. They're intended to be very, very functionally important events. They're not just like, well, something's happened in my infrastructure. So here's an example. Compliance rate of a baseline for settings management. Percentage of application deployments are failing, right? Failed to execute a migration job, or the Exchange connector, which I think you might be showing. See if we've got time for that. Failed to synchronize. And before we go into a demo, just a quick summary of the different types. So Diane says she's a server infrastructure administrator. She'll be looking at the operations manager. She's really interested in the basic server infrastructure. Is the site server working? Is the management point working? These are the events that are going to get sent to the operations manager. And you will also be able to get them in the console through status messages and things like that. But it's primarily operations manager that we're using for that. Meg, on the other hand, application deployment, right? What's the baseline doing? What's the success of that deployment? It's very client-centric. And so those are the things that alerts within the CM console are intended for. OK, software updates. We are basically making this simpler. So software updates, you have auto-deployment roles. You can filter on precisely what updates you actually want to be deployed. You can schedule the content for download. So the idea is you can set and forget, at least for a class of your updates. And we also have state-based upgrade groups. So we can deploy updates individually or in groups. Endpoint protection. I'm not going to say too much about this. This is a huge deal, though, in terms of integrating this within the infrastructure. And the key thing is really the simplicity of setup. Right? It's just integral with CM. It's part of the infrastructure. And just like software updates, you just start using it. And you can also see within the console, even down to the dashboard looks very similar to client status. We've really tried to make it very easy to use. And that's just highlighting the client setup, an easy migration from existing agent solutions. OK, so I'm going to actually go and move to my demo machine. We can see that. Good. OK. So I'm just going to actually, we knew we had so much to do, so we're actually kind of running out of time. But let me just show you some collections. So what I'm doing is basically doing server-based management here. And if I look at, I don't have, there we go. So here I have a collection which is server systems with the configuration management installed. And if you look at a query, it's basically saying, OK, the client is installed. Right? So I've actually derived this from another query. But that's the sort of standard limited. It's limited to server systems, and it's doing an additional query. So what I can do, and what I've done here, is actually use this new feature of including and excluding collections. So in this case, I don't have any rules. What I've done is I've included all my server systems, and I've excluded the server systems with the configuration management client. Now, in this case, that's 6 minus 5, which is just one device. But it's showing you the power of collections there. While I'm here, I can also set up alerts for this collection. So if I want to add, for example, client check pass threshold, I can go ahead and do that. I can set that to be 90% if I want to. And I can also do endpoint protection alerts. That's on my collection. While I'm here, we talked about a lot of the settings are within the client settings, which I'll go through in a moment. Power management is one which is actually still set on the collection. So this is where you find it. If you want to do power management for this collection, it's there. OK, so let's go to client settings. So I talked about default client settings. This is your base set of settings which you're going to use for probably most clients. Now, the much popular MOF editor has been replaced by this wonderful UI, which gives the ability to switch on hardware inventory classes. And you can actually filter even for particular classes. So if you want to switch on asset inventory classes, asset intelligence, rather, you can do that. So that's pretty cool. And you can also filter on classes that are just enabled. The other thing I can do is export here. So Brian talked about the ability to import. I can also export that, and that just results in a standard, actually I won't go to it, it's a standard MOF file, which is very similar to 2007. You can actually import that back again.
Do you register keys for that?
Sorry, the question?
Do you register keys and stuff for that?
Can you do registry keys? That is something which we'll have to talk offline on that one. Okay, it depends. Right. Unless you've got a better answer, Brian.
I don't.
Okay. Okay. So that's our inventory settings. So what I want to look at now is, this actually seems to have locked up. So we're going to now look at this client status. So it talks about client status in the UI. So here we can see that I have client status set on my all systems collection. And the first thing you can see here is I have this alert which is being generated. So it's saying, look, my client check pass rate has fallen below 98%. So I can see why that's, you can see that I have some clients that are actually failing. So I can drill in here. And this is a really cool feature of the console. So I've gone from client status to one node, and I can go and look at these computers. I can also right-click here and display additional properties. So I don't actually need to open up individually. I can see if I want to see the AD time, Active Directory site, I can see that there. The other thing is the back button, which I think is so cool. So like I can go there and come back to my client status view. So let's have a quick look at this client activity. If I want to look at client activity separately, I can do that. You can see that here's my threshold, alert threshold. So we're a little bit above the threshold, which is why we haven't got an alert. If I look at client check, you can see in this case it's showing me all of the clients. And you can see that trending. I've set my threshold very, very high, and for some reason my clients some of them are failing with their client check, and therefore I've got that alert. And this is all bubbled up into the alerts. If I want to see all the alerts in the console, I can see them here. You can see that we've got some infrastructure problems going on. Do you know about these, Brian?
I do.
No? Okay, we'll have to look into that and see what's going on. In fact, why don't we do that now? So, voila, here we have Operations Manager 2012, just to prove that it is. There we go, in all its glory. I'm sure we see other sessions on that. And this is showing me the alerts that are currently coming from the site. Now that is rather a geeky view, so why don't we go and look at the actual hierarchy diagram. So just like within CM, obviously within Operations Manager, you can show the full architecture and the state of it. And you can see, because it's a demo machine, things are not looking too good. So I can see my CAS has got some problems here. So what I'm going to do is open Health Explorer and see a summarization of what's going on. So I've got some availability issues, and I've got some configuration issues. So my availability is there's a problem with WSUS synchronization. And this is the great thing about Operations Manager. It gives you the knowledge. You can see exactly what the cause could be and the resolution. And in fact, it's not just that infrastructure. Our own asset intelligence synchronization point is also failing. And again, we have the knowledge already created there, ready to go to say, OK, this is what you can go and do to go and fix it. So that is Operations Manager managing Configuration Manager. And I think we are good to go back to you, Brian.
Awesome.
So I've got you set up.
Thank you. Thanks, Russ. OK, so once you have your compliance information going, you've got software updates, endpoint protection, you're checking the health of your client activity, making sure that everything's going well. Now you're going to think about getting down to real business, right? You got to get your users the software they need to do their job. So that's what I'm going to talk about here. In 2007, if you think about it, really optimized for machine-based management. We're managing machines, we're deploying software to systems, and it was very challenging to manage users for you, the customer, because of the we didn't have the feature set in place to support you to do that. So you were forced to figure out what users are assigned to what devices. Maybe you had some custom tools. Maybe you had a spreadsheet. Who knows, right? So you had to keep track of that. And if you think about package programs as a software distribution engine, it's essentially just a script execution engine, right? So you have run a command line, and here's some architecture things to think about. But really, we're going to run a script, and we're going to install it on the system. So there wasn't a lot of smarts in the system. You had to build a lot of the smarts into your packages, into your packaging. There's a lot of burden on you, the customer. So we tried to take a little bit of that burden off of you and build its automation into the product. So in Configuration Manager 2012, not to scare anyone, we're still committed to machine-based scenarios, right? Everything you can do in Config Man 2007 with package programs, you can do in Configuration Manager 2012. The key now is that we've really introduced some new, what we call people-centric scenarios. Really putting some features in the product that allow you to think about users first, users as resources, users that get software. So we're moving to, in Config Manager 2012, a state-based application model. So you can deploy the application to a set of users. We can know within the system which users are working on which devices and which devices are their primary device. So if a user logs into a kiosk or a server to do some maintenance tasks, they're not going to download all their development tools and Office, and right? So we know within the system, with your help, either because you've manually defined the relationships or we've used some heuristics to figure out, hey, this user logged in 10 times, you were able to set some thresholds, so we're able to set those relationships. The user themselves can actually go into the software catalog if a policy is there that allows them to do that, and they can say, this is my primary device. And then we can use this state-based application system to go ahead and deploy this software. If the software is already there, we won't try to reinstall it. If somehow it's not there when it's supposed to be, we'll put it back. So it's a very smart system that can get software to users in a way that makes sense. And you can use these primary device rules when you define your applications. Like, I only want these applications to go to user's primary device. These applications should go then to these other ones to all users, no matter where they log in. So you saw the state-based distribution point. So a lot of things we're trying to automate that you had to work on yourself, we're trying to automate those and make it easier for you. If you think about app management and the feature set, you can think about how we have install, we have uninstall, we've got supersedence, you can define dependencies. You're going to see some presentations on this week, but it's a very, very rich system for deploying software. But understanding the relationship between users and devices is key for that. So I basically just talked about all these things, so I'll move to the next slide. Just to go a little bit in depth in app model, the applications have detection methods, so we know whether they're on the system or not. We won't download and take any action on a system that already has an application installed. So we have requirement rules, so we can look to see, is this the user's primary device? Does it have enough memory? Is it the right operating system? Is it the right language? Right? So we have rules that you can use to define where an app should install and where it shouldn't install. Apps have relationships to other applications. This app needs these other 5 apps. So make sure those all install successfully before you install the parent app. So a lot of smarts around the relationships. Supersedence. This application supersedes this other one that's on the system. It's older. We're going to remove that one and put the new one in place based on your policy and your distribution of the software to those users. So there's 2 full sessions dedicated to this. We walk in depth in app model. We talk about global conditions, user device affinity, software catalog, ton of stuff. So if you have a chance, there are 2 afternoon sessions. That 4 p.m. one does not look appealing if you're trying to get out of here and go to dinner or something, but please, trust me, it's going to be good. So go ahead and check out those sessions to get more information. We brought people-centric into operating system deployment. So you can, within an operating system deployment and task sequence, you can deploy these applications and take advantage of the requirement rules and the dependencies and the detection methods and all the things I talked about. The other key is that because we know the relationship now between users and devices, we can deploy software via task sequence through OSD when the user isn't logged on. So typically, you do an operating system deployment, you have a bunch of user-targeted apps, the user logs in, and bam, they get all this software. But because we know this user is assigned to this device, we can start pre-deploying all that software to the machine that you've targeted to the user because we know the relationship. So some keys there for successful distribution of software within OSD. We've also made some specific improvements to operating system deployment. So offline servicing of images, being able to apply updates from the software catalog to the images, just one boot media per hierarchy. Okay, so it simplifies the infrastructure, and some USMT 4.0 integration. We've got a session on this. I sound like a broken record, but we do. John Vincel is going to present this. He knows his stuff. The guy's been working on OSD for a long time. That's Wednesday at 10:15. If you can check it out, he'll go way in depth on OSD. Also, VDI. So we've taken our first little step into VDI, and we've done some things in the product. We're looking and evaluating at how we can further incorporate VDI into Configuration Manager 2012. What we have in the product today, and it requires some work and integration with our partners, Citrix, and obviously some internal teams that are doing some things as well. But we can now gather virtual machine inventory information. So we can say, this is a virtual machine. It's pooled or personal. Here's the host. So we can have some additional inventory information about virtual machines that we didn't have before. In addition, you can use those inventory items and build global conditions for use within application deployment. So for these pooled VMs, please don't deploy all this software, right? It's already got it pre-deployed. We want it to move quickly. We don't want to have the user log in and wait 30 minutes for stuff to install. So you can make some decisions based on this inventory information. Also, we maintain the uniqueness of a client. So when you shut down a pool and you pooled VM and restarts, we don't have to re-register and create all these obsolete records that is typical of a CMO7 deployment. So that means that we can recognize, oh, we're getting a machine record here. This looks awfully familiar. Let's do a quick check. We'll match it up, and you won't get that obsolete record. So we'll be able to keep your environment clean and end that confusion of all those obsolete records. So I think that's pretty huge. In addition, the randomization of schedules. So once again, in a pooled environment, you've got 1,000 pooled VMs coming up at 8 o'clock in the morning, and all of a sudden Config Manager comes in and starts scanning for software and do an inventory scan all at once. No, we don't want that. Okay. So we've set some pieces of functionality in the product that allow us to kind of randomize the schedule so that we can take the load off the system and make it easier. And we're just scratching the surface in Config Manager 2012 and moving forward with some exciting VDI stuff. We also have built-in device management in Configuration Manager 2012. And we have two flavors. These aren't technical terms. I don't know if marketing would approve. But depth, I call it depth management, and light management. The depth management is what you would expect of a fully managed desktop or laptop, right? So you've got the full feature set, broader feature set, software distribution, things like that, common model for deploying. And we're reaching beyond just the standard Windows desktops and laptops, but we're going for a full management solution. Then we have what we call light management, and this is what you get through the Exchange connector, through an EAS connected device. Light management, so I'll talk real quickly. Depth, right? Talked about that. We have Windows Mobile 5, 6.1, and 6.5, and Nokia Symbian Bell devices. You're probably thinking to yourself, that's cool, nice first step. We got some other devices we're thinking about too in our environment. I'm sure you are. But we've got some infrastructure in place now. We're branching out, and this is our first step into device management for depth. With these other devices, when I talk about light management, we're talking about the Exchange connector. We've got some inventory and discovery information we get from Exchange. We can actually apply policies, some lightweight policies like for passwords, things like that. And then remote wipe, you can do just some settings policies, and we support an on-prem Exchange 2010 or Exchange Online.
So you can get a pin on your iPhone now. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just Windows.
I don't have an iPhone, by the way. It's a Windows phone.
Phone 7 mine.
Is my boss out there somewhere? Okay. So what this slide is saying is your customers, your end users don't have to look at wrap and that control panel applet to install software. Okay, essentially that's what this says. We've got a software catalog, which is web-based. It allows end users to go in and search for software and browse software and get software installed in their system that they need. They can request software through the software catalog. You can approve that software. They can install it. Also, we've got the Software Center, which is our client UI. And end users can go in and configure a number of settings, their business hours, presentation mode. They can see when patches are supposed to be installed, when the system will reboot, what's happening with their system. And you can get there through little tool tips and things like that. So there's a lot richer end user experience in the product in Config Manager 2012 than we had before. So let me go in here really quickly, do a quick demo. Make sure I know where I am. Okay, so you think I'm going to go into the console and I'm going to create an app, maybe Adobe Reader. That's what we usually do up here. Okay, but we're going to do all that tomorrow. So actually, a developer came to me last week. His name's Shaq, and he said, Brian, I got this thing I want you to show the customers. I think it's pretty cool. I said, what is it? He said, well, I got this thing in the product. It's in RTM. It's this way that you can use the admin console to look at the WMI provider and check out the classes and stuff. And I said, this is in the product? He said, it's in the product. Got it approved. It's not unusual that I wouldn't know that, though. I'm the infrastructure lead, okay, so I don't know everything. But I thought it was cool. I wanted to get in front of you. And instead, you're going to see all the demos for app management. And I was going to do Exchange Connector, but we're running out of time. So in the labs, you can easily just go through the wizard. I can even show you where to go. You can go in here, I believe, administration, and you can create Exchange Connectors. I'll walk the wizard. You kind of see the different settings, and hopefully you get to the lab, you'll be able to do that. So, but I was going to show you this thing. So essentially what I did is I created a shortcut here, and I added to the line debug view, SMS:debug view. You can try this out. So I'm going to launch this.
You get very excited about this, Brian, I have to say. It is a debug tool, right? Yeah.
It doesn't sound exciting, but you might like this. I just want to get this in front of you. And Shaq was like, hey, if some people are interested in providing feedback, come on up and talk to me. We'll get the email alias. I'll give you Shaq's, mine. We can talk about additional enhancements. But also, I'm kind of I worked a lot on the app management, and you can check out some geeky information about the apps using this. So I was pretty excited. So let's try it out. So if you notice, the console I used before has our standard 4, but now I've got the super secret 5th wonder bar. Okay, the tools wonder bar. And there's an opportunity here to extend this into other areas, other tools, other things you could use. So this namespaces tool essentially allows you to look at the WMI provider, the SMS provider. Go ahead and go, let's say I can look at SMS_collections. So how many use like WebM test or something to go in and look at some additional information about, so a lot of you, right? So this would kind of replace WebM test because you're in the console and you're trying to check out some stuff, get some extra information about objects. There it is. So you go in, I'll show the details. I can see all the properties of collections. Here's an interesting one, all the methods. Now, as soon as Shaq showed me this, I started right-clicking, like trying to figure out how to run. I want to try to run some of these methods. You can't do it yet, but I think we should try to look at future versions and be able to do that. But anyway, you can at least see the different methods here available for collections. And I can look at instances, and I can select this first instance. I can look at the properties. I think this is the all systems collection. So I can see all systems. I can look at last change, date, time, the actual, all the different various properties of this object, maybe for troubleshooting purposes. Now that's okay, but let's look at something here. For example, if I go to applications, while I'm in this view, I can actually take one of my applications. Let's look at the deployment types. I've got one deployment type here, which is MSI based, and I can show the object details. It'll pop me back in and take me right to the WMI properties for that particular deployment type. And as easy as it is to troubleshoot through the logs in Config Manager 2012. Okay, I'm kidding. Sometimes you actually need some of these properties to go run the logs and look for things like this scope ID thing, which is really nasty. But now you can go and get it, figure it out, and then do some troubleshooting. I think there's some real value here. Also, this gets me really excited. This is the actual, we talk about application model all the time, right? This is the actual app model. We call it the digest. And you can see all the detection methods defined here, the MSI detection method, the product code used. You can see all the global conditions. So this, you can actually troubleshoot the actual model of the deployment type. And like I said, grab the scope ID, do some additional troubleshooting in the logs if you have to, things like that. One other little thing that he showed me was you can go in here.
Let's show the debug view, yeah.
Yeah, and you can
pretty
go
cool.
up in
Yeah.
and switch to debug
Yeah,
view.
this is
And now I've got all of those properties for all those objects here. Let me scroll over, see if I can find the actual. Okay, let me sort by.
That is pretty cool. I think that
The
is pretty
display
easy
name.
though, but I like that a lot.
Yep, now it'll be 10. And if I want to switch back, I can go packages and just switch back to normal view. So this is a first start. If you think this, what do you think of this? Will this help save some time? Is this cool? Shaq's going to be really excited. So I'm going to let him know. And if you have additional feedback, additional things you'd like to see, come on up and see me afterward. All right, I know we're running short, so I'm going to get back to the presentation. Huh? Oh, you just add to the end of the console execution SMS:debug view. And then you run it. No slash, just SMS:debug view. Run it, and you'll get that additional Wunderbar. You could try it in the lab, too. That'd be pretty cool. Anyway, sir, off to you, Russ.
Cool, thank you. Hey, Brian. So just to close out, we've got all the infrastructure, we've got our clients working, software distributions working. We're going to look at defining compliance for clients and the evolution of DCM. Quick look at power policy, and then we'll have a look at reports. So there's enhancements in the area of reports. And finally, good old remote control. You can't beat it. It's actually new and improved for this release. So settings and compliance management. So within 2007, the ability to define a baseline. You're basically monitoring the settings on clients or servers. So you can monitor drift. Is this registry value within this timeout? Is this timeout within this certain range? Otherwise, you'll actually flag that it's changed. So within 2012, there's a couple of key things. One is that we have the ability to auto-remediate. So if it's fallen outside the range, then you can actually set it. Or you can use that specifically to apply settings, which is how, in fact, we do with some of our mobile device management. We'll actually apply settings. Or you can create an alert if the baseline has drifted. So that's, I think we saw that within the alerts in the console. So the baseline configuration item, so it supports all those instrumentation, AD, file, SQL, a variety of means of getting at that data. Improved functionality, the ability to copy settings, copy baselines between each other to make it easy to customize. Talked about trigger console alerts and some richer reporting features around that. We also have beefed up the versioning and audit tracking, so to make it easier to track different versions of baselines. I think some of these get pretty complex, so you actually want to be able to do that within the console. The other thing we have here is there's quite a library growing of existing templates. So compliance, government compliance, energy compliance, they are out on the web now as part of the GRC Solution Accelerator. So that really is adding value of content to this infrastructure. It's really making it very valuable. Power management. So this is, within 2007, we have power management. Just to go over how you might use it. It's integral with 2012, all built in. So the first thing you want to do is monitor. You want to monitor your power usage. You don't want to change anything with your clients. So you're going to set power monitoring on, and you're going to check the graphs to see what's going on. Then you can plan about, okay, what do I want for non-peak and peak power? Once you've done that, you can then apply a power policy and hopefully see the changes in that. And finally, you can, in week 4, you can generate reports. And these are reports to actually how much power you're saving, how much CO2 you're saving as well, which is a good thing, I believe. Okay, just a few things about power that were actually improved within 2012. We exclude VMs, so if it's a guest VM, we will not apply power policy to it. That obviously makes sense. Reports will continue to show the total number of machines within a collection. End user opt-out. So this is, again, about us being user-centric, which we're beginning to give more control to the user, scary as it may be. But in this case, power, exactly what you're doing with my laptop, is pretty important. So I kind of want to know, have the ability to opt out. Again, this is administrator configurable. You don't have to give the users the ability to do this, but if you do, allow it, then they can see that within the software center. Copying power policy from another collection. I showed you on the collection that power policy is there. To make that easy to use, you can basically browse to a collection and then copy it to another collection, so that makes it a lot easier. Reporting. So we've integrated SOS SQL Server reporting services and retired the legacy report solution within or the existing reporting solution. We do require SQL reporting services 2008, SP1, but I'll show you in a moment, it's really pretty powerful what we've done to actually increase the flexibility of reporting. Just to say, it's pretty easy to set this up. Just put in the name of the site database, specify a folder name for reports, the credentials the reporting service point will use, and it's just it's another server role. So it does give you the reporting experience of, you've got a choice. You can either go in console to show the reports, or you can use the reporting manager on the web, and that might be a good choice. For example, for help desk, if you don't want to give people access to the full console, they can go hit the web reports. Remote control. What's new in remote control? Well, we already announced that Gold Key was back. Control-Alt-Delete. That always gets applause. It's incredible. It's either the def moth or the remote control. It's amazing. And below the scenes, we've also kind of updated it quite a bit, which means we've worked with the variety of means that Windows may do to foil with a increasing security. So to traverse Win login and lock screen and those sort of issues. We mentioned that you can apply this granular client settings per collection, which is pretty good. You can be very specific about who gets to do remote control. The ability to lock the keyboard and mouse and create a firewall exception to allow remote control to get through to the machine. And finally, we talked about client status. That CCM eval will monitor the remote control service and make sure it's in a good state to be used. Usability, we now have FQDN support, copy and paste, works, which is pretty cool. Multi-mon support Windows Aero. And we also have performance. I think that's the, security. It's highly secure, but the key thing is improved performance using less bandwidth. So that's a lot of the work that's gone under the covers to make this work. Okay, I think we're running out of time, but I might just have time.
You're good.
We're running out of time.
We'll probably won't have time for questions, but come on up and talk to us. Plus, like I said, there's a lot of sessions this week, so you'll have countless opportunities to ask questions. But definitely come up after the session if you have some specific questions. I know you had something about registry settings.
So actually, I'll answer that registry one. Actually, if you want to deploy, what you actually need to do is deploy a moth to the client to actually instrument the registry information. And then you can use, then you can collect it via the UI I showed within the console. So I'm just going to show you this one thing. So this is a baseline which is actually has a configuration item which disables client remediation. So does it actually work? Oh, here we go. So you can see here, this is actually the registry value you do. If on servers, I talked about client status, it actually checks and then it will remediate. If you don't want to do that, then you can set this registry key to do that. So what I've done is defined a compliance setting for this. And it's actually, if I look at this, I can actually see that it's deployed. So it's the baseline score, isn't it? Let's go back to my configuration items. There we go. So I can actually see it's deployed to my server systems with configuration management client. But what I can do, since we are actually pretty user-centric, what I can do is I can actually deploy this to a user collection. So I can actually deploy it to my executive users. So if I say, this could be remote control, or in this case it's stopping remediation, I can say, okay, I'm going to deploy this baseline to this set of users, and in turn, that will apply to their machines if we have affinitized that user to the device. So this is another cool consequence of the work we've done in this area. Okay, have we got time for a remote control demo? I think we might just have time for it.
Go for it.
So what I'm going to do is go to my all server systems collection. And I'm on the CAS, so what I'm going to do is remote control my primary site. Here we go. Okay. No, I didn't want to start Resource Explorer.
We made some changes to Resource Explorer, too.
Yeah, Resource Explorer is pretty cool. I'll show you that in a moment, yeah. It's got some great icons in it. Okay, here we go. So, remote control connecting to the host. So you can see we've got this wonderful green banner, which is basically saying, hey, I am being remote controlled. And I can send Control-Alt-Delete. Whoa, that's exciting, isn't it? Yeah.
All right.
And the other thing I can do here is I can, where's my collections gone? Asset compliance. So let's choose a collection here. Executive devices. I didn't want to do that. Just bring out a property of one of these. Bring a property of this. So what I can do is cut and paste on this guy. And hopefully, go down here. And where's my, that was MMS. Whoa, there we go. Cut and paste from remote control. Whoa! It doesn't get better than that. It really doesn't.
You won't see this at any other session, I promise.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you won't. Yeah. I'll tell you what, there's one last thing I wanted to show, and that was let's go back to administration when we finished here. So client settings, I didn't mention that there's a priority here. So for example, for those exec client machines, I'm actually applying some specific policy to them just for remote tools. So I haven't got all of my settings there. I've just got a subset of them, switching off software inventory. So that's pretty cool. I'll just go in to show you because we mentioned the Exchange connector, and we laughingly talked about iPhones. So if you must have iPhones and Android devices in your environment, then at least now you can apply some policy to them via the Exchange connector. So in this case, we are allowing internet sharing. This is the one I wanted. I can actually require a 4-digit PIN on the device. So that goes to Exchange. And I have various means of discovering these entities into CM. Okay. I think we're nearly there, Brian.
That's it.
So, summary, we've given you a kind of whistle-stop tour. I hope this has given you a pointer to the other sessions, which you'll be able to see this week. There's really a lot of very detailed drill down. I hope you can see that Configuration Manager offers really comprehensive systems management and security management. And there's two key things about this. One is that we're ready for the future, for user-centric, for the proliferation of devices. We're ready for that. But we're also delivering you functionality now, which is going to save infrastructure, complexity, and cost, and simplify the management needs, and keep everything working healthy. So that's our goal, to do those two things.
Yep. Check out the sessions. Enjoy MMS. Thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you.
It's going to be an awesome week.